Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar. Today is a Wellness Wednesday, and we have a great guest here with us today. His name is Pandit Dasa, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about him and his very needed special message that he will deliver to us today. Pandit Dasa is a former monk, mindfulness expert, author, and international keynote speaker who speaks to Fortune 100 and 500 companies. In his speeches, he emphasizes the concept that self-care is not selfish and that we need to learn to close the apps in our mind, otherwise we will feel drained and depleted. He provides practical tips on how we can become more resilient by better managing our emotional, mental, and physical health so that we can be more focused and productive and be more present for our colleagues and family. He has spoken to organizations such as Google, NASA, London Stock Exchange, IBM, Citibank, World Government Summit, Kellogg Catalog, and so on. We are so very glad to have him here with us. So we welcome you. LIBOR welcomes you, Pandit. I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be able to share these wonderful tips on just managing our stress and having a work-life balance. And as you did mention in your introduction that I spent 15 years living as a monk, you know, when I lived as a monk, the number one question everyone asked me is, why did you become a monk? And now that I'm not a monk, I haven't been one for about 7 years. Now people are asking me, why are you no longer a monk? So I figured I can just start off by telling a little bit of my story and then get into some of the other messages that I want to share with you. So I grew up in Southern California, and basically, to keep a really, really long story short, my parents went from having nothing to becoming multimillionaires in LA. And then due to a fire, their factory burnt down and we ended up losing everything, went completely broke. All that happened in a matter of about 10 years. From having nothing when they came from India, having everything and losing everything. And then when we lost everything, my dad decided to explore new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria in 1992, 1993. Right when Bulgaria was coming out of communism, as were many other countries in that region. We left LA behind for good. And in Bulgaria at that time, no one spoke English. It was very foreign to folks. And nobody really understood English because I don't think there was any English movies or anything on TV that was in English. The only two channels that were there had English and Russian programming, so I couldn't understand anything. So my life had come to a screeching halt. All my friends were in LA. I had no friends. I couldn't speak the language. I couldn't watch TV. And of course, there was no internet. So it was a very interesting time of my life, filled with change, you could say upheaval and turbulence. And how did I deal with it? Well, mindfulness is what I sort of turned to at that time. Meditation, mindfulness, that really helped me deal with the uncertainties that I was going through. And I know many of us are going through uncertainties now. Because of COVID, it just kind of continues. It's just going on and we just don't know when it's going to end, but it will. Everything in life does end. That's one thing I learned as a monk. So spent 2 years in Bulgaria, moved back to the US, to the East Coast, to New Jersey, so we could be close to Manhattan. And then in 1999, I decided to take a month or two and go to India and live with monks to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to live and the impact I wanted to make on everybody around me and on the world. So I went there to Mumbai, India, and I was living with 40 monks. I wasn't planning to become a monk. I was just a visitor. We were all sleeping on the hardwood floor, wake up at 4 in the morning, meditate for 2 to 3 hours a day, and the rest of the day was spent serving one another and serving the community. So it was a life of simplicity, humility, and service. And after that, I spent 6 months in India as opposed to 1 month, came back to the US and moved into a monastery on the Lower East Side of New York City. I know the chat is enabled. If you have been to the Lower East Side of New York City, please give a thumbs up or put something in the chat so I know that you know the area that I'm talking about, that I spent so much time in. So please do feel free to share something so I can see. So it was a very interesting, okay, we've got a few people here raising their hands. That's great. Fantastic. So it was a very interesting experience. I was planning to spend some time with monks in New York for maybe just a few months. Ended up spending a total of 15 years living as a monk in New York City, wearing orange colored robes, shaved head and everything. So it was actually, here, I'm going to show you a picture of what I look like. Here we go. I know it's a picture on my book cover, my first book that I wrote. That's me actually, right? That's me, for those of you who can see this. And that's the Empire State Building. So I could see the Empire State Building from the rooftop of our monastery. This is an actual picture, not just Photoshop. A friend of mine took it. So that's what I look like. I don't know. Maybe you can tell it was me. It actually is the same person. So then during that time, I was doing a lot of speaking on mindfulness and stress management on college campuses in the city and around the country. Then 7 years ago, I left the monastic life so that I could bring these teachings of work-life balance, workplace culture to organizations around the US and also overseas. So that's a little bit of my story. There's a lot more to it, of course, but I'm keeping it brief. But one of the key things, so we're talking about how to close out the apps in our mind. And one key thing is I like to compare our mind to one of these, right? And I think we all have one of these, two of these, maybe too many of these. So what happens? Here's a question that you can respond to in the chat. What happens when you have too many apps open on your smart device? So what happens when you have too many apps open? What does it do to your smart device? Okay. Yes, it overloads, right? It stops working. It slows down, it drains the battery. So it's easy to close out the apps. You just swipe them up and they close out and your phone starts to work better. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I really would like to see some more answers for this question. How many apps do you think are open in your mind right now? How many apps do you think are running in your mind, actively running in your mind right now? How many things are you thinking about? How many things are you planning? How many things are you worrying about? I'd love to see some answers popping up for this. Okay, so how many apps do you think are going on in your mind? Okay, we've got 8 to 10. Someone said 5. Okay, do we have a few more? 10 to 12, 7 to 9. Okay, so these are the apps that we recognize. There's probably a lot more going on in the background. There was an article in Psychology Today that suggested that an average person, fasten your seatbelt for this, has between 25,000 and 50,000 thoughts per day. You heard that correctly, 25,000 to 50,000 thoughts a day. That's about 1,000 to 2,000 thoughts every single hour. The mind's just a really busy place. It's constantly processing information. Everything you see, smell, taste, or touch enters into the mind and you start processing it. And what does our mind do? Our mind spends a lot of time dwelling on the past, especially negative things that have happened in the past. Now, please let me know if you agree with this. You could put your hand up or you can say yes in the chat. How many of you have done this where maybe let's say you've had an argument with someone and then you start replaying that entire argument all over again in your head? Has anyone ever done that activity? I know I have. Yeah, if someone's like, yeah, definitely. I think we all have done that. And it's such an incredible waste of time, isn't it? It's such an incredible waste of our mental and emotional energy to replay that thing, because what is the replay accomplishing? It's not fixing it. You're not going to have a chance to say the things you didn't get to say during that conversation. It's doing absolutely nothing for us except frustrating us all over again. So when our mind's not in the past, reliving old memories, we're worrying about the future. Now, planning is good. Preparing is good. But when we just start worrying about stuff that we don't have any control over, that causes us more stress and anxiety. So you can see from this, a lot of our stress and anxiety is self-induced. We actually do it to ourselves, right? We actually do it to ourselves. It's not someone else's responsibility. No one else is doing it to us. It's not an external situation. Of course, these things can cause stress, but a lot of times we're just doing it to ourselves, just reliving stuff and worrying and really blowing things out of proportion, where we just lose perspective on something. We come up with worst case scenarios. So this is where mindfulness comes in really handy, where we can actually learn to close out the apps. How do we do that? Well, a few steps. One is, first, you have to become aware that oh, I'm having a negative thought right now. Oh, I'm replaying that thing from 3 months ago, 6 years ago. So first of all, there has to be awareness that, oh, it's happening right now, right? In that moment, you have to press pause. Like you press pause on your favorite TV show because the phone rings or something and you press pause. You got to press pause. First awareness, then press pause. Like, okay, I'm not going to let this thought play out because it's going to leave me drained and exhausted and probably feeling a little depressed at the end. So I'm going to press pause, take a deep breath in, exhale, and breathe it out. Right? So you basically now stopped your mind from playing out that whole scenario all over again because it actually didn't do any good. So that's one thing that we can do. Now, it's really important that during this time when so many of us are working from home, there's uncertainty because of the industry you're all in right now. Things are unpredictable. Things are slower than normal, slower than we want them to be. And so how do we deal? See, we can't change the situation, right? We know that. We can't get rid of COVID, otherwise we all would have, right? I love to travel and speak. Now I've been doing this for 2 years now on computers, and basically all I see right now is myself and the LIBOR logo. So I'm speaking to myself and the LIBOR logo. I know your people are there, but this is what I've been doing for the last 2 years. I love just being in front of people. So we'd love to make this change and get COVID out of here, but we can't change the situation. But what we can do is change our mindset and change our habits on how do we deal with the stress, anxiety, and uncertainty that we're surrounded by. It's all about mindset. And again, so just the way we press pause on the negative things from the past, when we start coming up with worst case scenarios, we have to recognize that, oh, I'm coming up with a worst case scenario. Pause. I'm not letting that play out. It only is going to leave me more anxious and stressed. So there's a few simple things, right? Some ways that we can take care of ourselves, our mind and body. Right? And it's very important. And one thing is really important is that as it was, I mentioned earlier, or Marianne mentioned, that self-care is not selfish. We should not be embarrassed about taking care of our physical, mental, or emotional health, especially if you're experiencing depression, anxiety, whatever it is. Mental health is nothing to be embarrassed about. Are you embarrassed if you have a toothache and you have to go to a dentist? Do you feel embarrassed if you have some other medical health related issue and you have to go to a doctor? No. So why should we be embarrassed if we're experiencing high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression? The lifestyle that has been imposed upon us, it's natural for us to feel all of these things in a more magnified manner because we're not able to live in a normal way that we're used to, socializing and traveling and being outside. So there's nothing to feel guilty about. We have to learn to put our own oxygen mask on first before we can help others. Right? The airline industry tells us that. So we need to take care of our physical, mental, and emotional health. So if we're having issues with our physical health, mental health, emotional health, we need to make sure we get help for that. We shouldn't feel guilty. We shouldn't feel embarrassed. Our body's like a vehicle. Like if you have a car, do you just take it to the car wash and assume that that takes care of the whole car? No, you need to check what's under the hood and make sure we change the oil and change all the necessary fluids and everything else. So you got to take care of the outside and what's under the hood. Same thing for us. We take care of our outside and what's under the hood. We need to. It's our responsibility. No one else is going to do it for us. So take what you need to be strong and happy and healthy. So here are a few things that we can do. Some tips that we can apply into our life starting today. One thing, make sure you're getting a good night's sleep. Very, very important. And I know that sometimes in corporate America, we like to brag that we didn't sleep enough the night before. Like somehow it makes us look tougher or more determined. Actually, there's a lot of research from Johns Hopkins Medicine, Dr. Patrick Finan, in case some of you want to look that up. He explains that a lack of sleep on a regular basis can affect your mood, memory, health, and your judgment. So mood, memory, health, and judgment. How important are those when we're dealing with clients? Super important, I think. Mood, memory, health, and judgment. How important are those when we're dealing with our family? Extremely important. And when we're sleep deprived enough for long periods of time, if that's become like our habit or routine, The research explained that it increases our chance of developing heart disease, diabetes, colorectal cancer, and even increases our chances of developing dementia by 33%. And all the other things are also about 30 to 40% chance of increase if we're not getting enough sleep. Because what happens is, if we're not getting enough sleep, our body starts needing energy. And then it starts craving sweet, salty, and starchy foods. Because that's where you get the quick energy. And then who knows, our pantries might be filled with junk. Sorry to admit, I also have a little bit of junk. I'm trying not to buy the stuff, but it's so easily available and you can just access it. So we have to really be paying attention to that. Right? So make sure you're getting a good night's sleep, 6 to 8 hours. You know, it may vary a little. I'm just curious, how many hours of sleep do you guys get? Please put it in the chat. I'm just curious, how many hours do you average every night? And I'm going to now give you a few tips. I'm hoping most of you get about 6 hours at least. I get about 6. I used to wake up after about 5 or 6 hours in the monastery, so my body's still kind of used to that. So yeah, most people are getting 7, 6 hours, some 5. So here's a few things you can do. So please make a note. Please take notes on the few tips that I'm going to suggest. Some of them you may already be familiar with. Maybe I'll say something you're not familiar with, so this could be something you implement. One is turn off the blue light on your phone. So our phones have a blue light, right? And this blue light interferes with the body's ability to produce melatonin, the sleep hormone. So when you're sitting there at night like this, and your blue light is, fully on your face, it prevents the body, or it interferes with the body's ability to produce melatonin. Another thing, so there's a setting on your display in your settings where you can turn the blue light off. So my blue light turns off at around 9 p.m. and it turns back on at like 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. So it goes to a dimmer yellow light, which doesn't interfere with our body to produce melatonin. Another important thing, you want to disconnect from your work at least 3 hours before going to sleep. You don't want to be just working, put your computer away, then try to go to sleep. You won't be able to, because you've just revved up your mental engine. And it's like you've driven really fast, you turn your car off and you expect it to be cooled off immediately. No, it takes half an hour for the engine to cool off. What about this engine? This is running, it's going to still be working at night because dreaming, all kinds of other things, it's processing everything you went through that day. So disconnect from your work, put your work devices in a separate room, shut them down completely so that you don't feel like, in case you get an idea, I need to send this email, they'll get, I got to go get it in that room and I got to power it up. Put it away. Your work-life balance is much more important than that one email. Emergency situations, okay, but don't make every situation an emergency situation. Drinking alcohol late at night also interferes with the body's ability to produce melatonin. So usually not a good idea. In the evenings, dim the lights in your home, because the body has this circadian rhythm, which lets it know it's time to sleep, it's time to wake up. And if it's just fully bright in your home in the evening, your body's thinking, it's daylight, I need to keep working. So dim the lights in your rooms, do something calming. Maybe that's reading a book, listening to music. So something calming and relaxing in the evening that allows your body to rest, feel relaxed, and you can actually go to sleep. And final one, don't send emails while sitting in bed. You don't want to do that. We don't want to send emails while we're sitting, especially work emails, because you don't want to turn your bed into a workplace environment and turn it into like that work energy. It's going to be hard to fall asleep in there. And when you wake up in the morning, don't start your day with this, right? Don't immediately check your email. Why not take a moment of gratitude? Why not take a few deep breaths? Why not do a little stretching? Why not just brush your teeth? Why not do a million different things other than just immediately grabbing for this, right? Do something else. Just take a few deep breaths, take a moment to be grateful, stretch a little, shower, do something other than just jumping into your device, right? And one final thing is trying to avoid negative news in the morning. Do something for yourself. Just something that'll allow you to get your day started off right? And then finally, there's many, many things we can talk about, but the next thing I want to talk about is just the practice of mindfulness. I know a lot of people think mindfulness is just for monks, like, hey, it's probably just for this guy. No, actually there's research. In Forbes magazine, there's an article that mentioned that mindfulness can help you become more productive. How? You close out the apps, you're more productive. You close out the apps in your mind, you're more productive. Do you make progress in a traffic jam or when the highway is clear? When the highway is clear. So mindfulness clears a traffic jam. There's an article in the New York Times that explained mindfulness can enhance creativity and memory. Psychology today explains that it can reduce anxiety, depression, and stress. And the Harvard Business Review explains that it can help us develop emotional intelligence, meaning that it can help us understand other people's perspective. And when we can do that, we can act with empathy. We can act with kindness. We can try and put ourselves in their shoes. And that increases collaboration and friendship at work even. So what I do want to do is I want to take just 5 minutes. I want to teach you some very simple mindfulness practices that you can do right after this call is over, before you meet with a client, before you have a meeting with your colleagues, or before you engage with your family, or before a meeting, right? So let's go ahead, close your eyes, please. Sit comfortably, make sure your phones are on silent, turn them over so you don't see any light turn on when the notification goes on. Close your eyes, sit comfortably, and let's come into the present moment. Again, these are very practical techniques you'll be able to use. Bring your awareness to the weight of your feet pushing down into the floor. So become aware of your feet touching the floor. Become aware of the weight of your body pushing down into the chair. Stay focused. Try not to plan. If your mind wanders off, gently bring it back. Now, I want you to take 3 deep breaths, and I want you to breathe in such a way that you fill up your lungs completely. Fill up your lungs completely. Let them expand. And as you exhale, I want you to breathe out any tension you're holding in your face, your eyes, your mouth, your jaw. Let your mouth drop down. Let your tongue drop down to the bottom of the mouth. Exhale. Take another deep breath in. Again, fill up your lungs, and you should be able to fill up your lungs a little bit more than you did in the previous time. And this time, as you exhale, I want you to breathe out any tension you're holding in your neck, your shoulders. Drop your shoulders down. Release any tension in your neck and shoulders. Take another really deep breath in. Fill up your lungs completely. This time, as you exhale, breathe out any stress and anxiety you're holding in any part of your body, your chest, your back, your lower back, your legs, your arms, your hands, your fingers. Let your body relax completely and bring your awareness into the region of your heart. See if you can actually pick up on the heartbeat by sitting very still. And now I want you to take a moment to think of 3 things that are happening in your life that you're grateful for. I know there may be many things happening that you wish weren't happening, but this is a great way to be able to shift our mindset to something positive. Think of 3 things that you're grateful for that are happening in your life right now. Now, take a moment to think of one colleague that you appreciate, their qualities, their contributions, and also a family member who's been supportive. Yeah, we're just shifting our mind to a more positive place. When our mind is positive, we're happier, which means we're healthier and we're more productive. Now, I want you to think of one quality you'd like to develop within yourself. Whether it's patience, maybe it's forgiveness, maybe you want to be kinder. Think of one quality you'd like to develop within yourself. And then visualize how developing that quality would affect your personality and your relationships with the people around you. Take another deep breath in. Exhale. Bring your awareness to your eyes. And you can slowly and gradually begin to open your eyes. Welcome back, everyone. I know that was very short, but we don't have that much time to go for a longer session right now. But I wanted to ask you, and I'd love to hear your response. How do you feel after just those 4 to 5 minutes of the mindfulness practice? How are you feeling right now? I would love to see what your response is. Are you feeling a little bit more refreshed, relaxed? And also, I'd love to see if there's any questions I can answer for everyone. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer those right now. Someone's saying a little more relaxed, more focused. Good, wonderful. That's exactly the purpose behind this. Very relaxed. Feeling great. Marian, are there any questions that we can address at this time? Someone.
Let me see.
Yes,
Sure.
please.
What would be, Pandit, what would be one tip in a very, very busy, hectic day that can get you centered? Realtors by nature, they just multitask, running, stress, and, what could be something realistically that we can all do to kind of refocus if the day just runs away from us.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that when that is starting to happen, first recognize that like your mind's going wild, right? Like it's just too much. And you may think you have not enough time in the day to do this. But that means that that's the most important time to do it, is just stop for a moment, even if it's for 1 or 2 minutes, and just put everything away and take a few deep breaths. And just try not to get rid of your to-do list, put your device away for literally 1 or 2 minutes, and take 5, 10, 15 deep breaths. Do that for yourself, because what'll happen is it'll clear out the mind, and then the next things you're about to do will become more clear, right? So it's like your GPS guiding you through an area where there's no traffic jam. We might think, oh, I don't have a minute, I better just keep going. Yeah, but if you take that minute or two, you'll clear your mind, and then you'll get more done. And whatever you get done, you'll do it with more efficiency. There's actually research showing that people who multitask are actually make more mistakes and get less work done, because the mind cannot do 2 things at once. If it could, we'd have no problem with texting and driving.
Yes.
But we have a problem with that one.
Thank you. And we do have some good questions here. Somebody's asking, how do you stay calm in an argument?
That's a good one. So obviously it's not easy. And I would say this, right? I would say that having a regular mindfulness practice prepares you for the moments that are unexpected, like the argument, right? It's like, and I'm not just saying this like, oh, because I'm trying to promote mindfulness. No, the point is, if you're going to run a marathon, do you just wake up that morning and say, hey, I think I'm going to run a marathon? No, you've been practicing for like a year or more. So when you practice it enough, your mind remembers to do it. So when we practice being calm in the morning or whenever, every day you're practicing calm, then when that heated moment comes, it's like muscle memory kicks in. And so what you can do in the middle of that, you can even take a few deep breaths, because when you're getting angry and upset, your mind just stops thinking. Everything stops. It just becomes angry, and all intelligence goes out the window. So in that moment, try to take a few deep breaths and really try to listen to what the other person is saying, and listen to understand and not to respond. Our strong temptation is to come up with a response and to defeat that person and prove them wrong. But try in as calm a way as possible, keeping your facial expressions calm, keeping your body relaxed, taking a few deep breaths, just listen to them and repeat back, called reflective listening. Repeat back to them what they just said. So you're saying that you don't like the way I do this, and when I do this, it bothers you. I just want to understand that that's the issue. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with me. How do you think it could be done better? So again, it's the expression on the face, the tone of the voice. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this or good at this. I make these mistakes where you get angry and you just kind of fly off. But at least try to stay calm in that moment by doing those breathing exercises and listen to understand and not to respond.
Great advice. I love that reflective listening.
Mm.
We have another question. Let's see. In a moment that you encounter an individual that needs perspective, how do you provide them with inspiration without sounding like a know-it-all?
Well, I think this question would require having more details on that specific situation. And I would go back to a similar answer, like really just try to listen to them, really understand what they're going through, and make sure that they understand that you understand how they're feeling. Like try to understand their perspective. Again, reflect it back, right? So, okay, and maybe a lot of times, not always, that's all that's needed is somebody who really understood them. And when you can understand them, then they'll understand that you understand their perspective. And then just maybe have a conversation. Ask them, well, is there another way to look at this? How else can we look at this? What's a different angle? I feel like we all have the answers to our own questions. But what it is like, we're very eager to respond to other people. Like we've got the answer. We want to fix things. We want to be the savior, the hero. And sometimes we are, which is great. But I think a lot of it starts with really trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes, understand what they're actually going through, having that empathy. And I think that can really help. So I think we're a little over time, but I can take another question if that helps. But what I will do in the meantime, really quick, Marianne, is I'm going to put a couple of links for people to, if they want to stay connected with me.
Yes, great. In the chat?
Yes, in the chat. So this is, I'm extremely active on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting videos on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting also on Instagram. So that was and I know I'm putting in a few links here, but this is my Instagram link. I'm literally every day, I'm posting on both of these social media channels, just positive messages, inspirational messages, 30-second videos, just positive messages. So if you want to follow me on those, you can. And if you ever want your office or organization for me to do a speech for them, there's a list of speeches and videos also on my website. So, and then, yeah, my website also has the section where you can find my book. This is the book that I wrote here. It's called Closing the Apps, which is what I talked about, how to be mindful at work and at home. And this book is available on Amazon, and I'll put that final link, and I probably overwhelmed you with all these links, but if you can just get to any one of those links, you'll be able to connect with me on all the other links as well. So I just want to thank you all for taking this time. It was a pleasure spending time with you. And I'll pass it over to Marianne.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us. Hopefully those who were able to join in got so much from it. And Pundit allowed us to record it, and I put the link in the chat. So our members, if they want to hear it again, hear your message again, or those that missed it, can play it at their convenience. So it's been an absolute pleasure. So glad we finally connected and we got you to meet with our membership. Hope to have you back again.
Thank you. I know we were talking about this for almost a year, and finally it's happening. And I know some people said they can't see the links, but I think it wasn't set up to share with everyone, but now I set it to everyone. So I'm hoping that the links came through everyone.
Okay, and we'll put them on our site as well.
Perfect. Well, Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank you. Be well and see you soon.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.